Morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It is the end of the last Friday of August 2022, and we are into the last quarter of the year pretty much. So, as I mentioned up front, I'm running a little under the weather, so I'm going to try and keep my portion short and sweet for today, and then hand over to the presentations. Just to kick off, I know I posted this on the group, but this one's specifically for Cameron because Cameron's our ninja of the week. So for those who don't know, she won a whole lot of medals last week at her kung fu or taekwondo or whatever it was. But it was quite timeless because we saw this presentation from Rich Mulholland, and basically he talks about what does kung fu have to do with presentation preparation. And basically, the concept behind it is that while there's a lot of your presentation that you don't specifically need, if you do your presentation preparation properly, you're able to fall back on it when you do need it or you need some slides or something. So preparation is everything when it comes to dealing with clients. Just a reminder of our purpose. We work with entrepreneurs tackling the twin challenges of access to finance and access to markets. I'm just going to quickly run through what we've been working on this week. So as you know, we've got quite a lot of activations happening at LeaderX, and you'll see on the marketing collateral coming up shortly. Jess and Anae and Ams are all working on various bits and pieces there, but we're going to have a standard LeaderX on the 15th. And built onto that is the Money Summit. So if you haven't yet registered, you can register using Decusatio as the registration link, and you can get free access to the event. What are we working on? Emma has been quite busy with our social media. It was actually quite interesting because a couple of people actually WhatsApped me about Jess's card and just saying that the quote was very apt and very powerful. So that's just Jess's social card for Women's Month. And then Emma's obviously been working on repurposing some of the Women in Business podcasts. So you'll have seen that came up as well. We got Emma published in the CHRO publication. She wrote about how HR can introduce innovation into organizations. It was quite nice because they also gave it quite a big punt on social media as well. Website copy, recruitment. Excuse me, I'm really struggling today. FD Center email and blog copy, and we did a Sunday Times Agri insert. What are we watching this week? So Old Mutual launched their BE transaction. So if you are a Black South African, you have the opportunity to apply for shares in Old Mutual from as little as 100 Rand a share. You can go and apply online. They do have a whole application process, but it does represent a potential wealth building opportunity for you. So for those who are interested, you're welcome to go and have a look at that. Something just quite topical at the moment. Yesterday morning, the Competition Commission actually raided 8 of the major insurers in South Africa. So it was Sanlam, Discovery, Old Mutual, Metropolitan, etc. And basically, they were looking for evidence that the major insurers collude with each other around price fixing and what they charge you on premiums. So that was quite an interesting one, and it could mean that your premiums for your insurance come down quite noticeably. Promising signs on the unemployment front as the economy actually adds jobs. About 600,000 jobs were added. What's quite encouraging, a lot of that was also in the construction sector. So we're quite excited to see a few green shoots in the economy. Profits at SA businesses are also continuing to recover this week. A number of companies reported their financial results. Adcock, Bidcorp, Baldwin, Sasol, Blue Label all had improved financial performance. And then just because it's one of those small things, but a big thing for the economy, the port operations in KZN and PAE have been a bit of a disaster under Transnet, and they've actually shortlisted some private sector businesses to go and run them. So I'm running short of breath and I'm a little under the weather. So I'm going to stop there and hand over to Ed. You're going to go first?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Thank you, Mark. Cool. Could I presenting rights? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you should be good. You should have presentation rights.
Super. Cool. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is a lovely Friday morning. I feel like the seasons are changing because it's a lot warmer outside. Yesterday, I was standing in the evening, and last night, sorry, I was just standing outside and I didn't have to wear a jersey. So I knew that, okay, now we officially moved from winter. But today, I'll be presenting on systems thinking and just get that there. Perfect. Okay. I'll be presenting on systems thinking as it was one of the subjects I had in my honors study block last semester. And I just wanted to touch on because I thought it was such an interesting idea and way of operating in terms of problem solving as well as solution generating in that. So I'll just jump off with first and foremost, what is systems thinking? Jump in there. So what is systems thinking? It's basically the approach of investigating and understanding systems as a whole rather than its individual parts, but also understanding that a system has lots of moving parts in it for it to function. So the system thinking which is more of a mentality than a pre-described technique of understanding information and processes and steps. But there are a few techniques that you could implement to understand things a lot clearer and more transparent in your understanding. And the opposite of system thinking is rather mechanistic thinking. And mechanistic thinking arose during the second industrial revolution because that was a time when systems and the conveyor belt and floor plans and factories were being built. So there was a lot of mechanisms and systems that were implemented at that time. And the way they dealt with problems is they see a problem and they deal with that problem in isolation. And this is quite a useful technique and it's very important in certain instances. Like, for example, if you're under pressure or you don't have a lot of information, you just address the problem as is. And that's not the case. So for example, I got here a broken fan belt in your car. Now you would think it's just a fan belt that wore out. That's mechanistic thinking. But system thinking forces you to think outside the box as to what else could have affected the fan belt to break. So for example, it could have been cut on something in the actual car itself. It can wear out because are known for wearing out and snapping, but there's other factors that could lead to it breaking or snapping in the way it does. So once again, it's a very old school style of thinking, but it's also useful in the present if you want to have a solution immediately in any situation or in any system. But then there's certain traps allocated with mechanistic thinking that could come across and just disturb the way of the thinking process you might implement. For example, there is the victim trap. So you may feel like everything is going against you and the universe is against you in your project, in your team, in your business. Followed by the victim trap is the blame trap. So it's easy to blame other things that's going on around instead of looking inwards and finding out how I contributed to the situation, how my thinking contributed to the situation. The next is group thinking. I didn't change the definition there, but group thinking is basically when the group starts to identify and pursue goals of the individuals within the group rather than the purpose of the group itself. So for example, this would be like in focusing on short-term goals as a group instead of the long-term objective of why we're here or why we are a business in the first place. The next one is excellence and expertise trap. This is very common when you're very successful at a certain skill. Let's say I'm good at baking cakes, and I continuously bake cakes only because I'm very good at it, but I never expand my skill horizon. I don't know if that's a good word. My skill set, sorry, into, for example, baking pies or baking something else. Because I'm so good at what I know, another example of this is BlackBerry. They were good at what they were doing, but they never innovated and changed their way of thinking or doing business or their products as well, which ultimately led to their downfall, which is great. And then we get to complex systems. Now, this is where you actually implement systems thinking and the approach to it. And there's also tips we'll get to and techniques I'll get to later in the presentation. So how do you identify a complex system? Now, this is very difficult. No one can identify a complex system for you. It has to be a choice on your own. But there is key signs of a complex system. First and foremost, there is a lot of elements within the system itself, large moving parts that often have their own interests, perspectives, and ideas in the whole system. And on top of it, there's a big exchange of information between each system, each element, each character in this entire system. It's not simple or straightforward. Next is that there's different stakeholders in the system. So other people besides yourself or a business owner need the system to work in order to benefit from it. And another one is the edge of chaos. So people outside of the organization or the system wouldn't understand it completely and would think it's chaotic. But within that subset, there is its own ecosystem of functioning and flowing. So for example, when electricity goes out and there is, obviously when you buy the robot, it becomes a stop and go, right? To other people outside of that, so people that have never seen load shedding in their life, so maybe people from America would see load shedding and would not do it a four-way stop. That looks chaotic to them, but because we have understanding and principles, there's an ecosystem that is able to flow when there is a problem. So that's concept within the complex system and system thinking theology right there. And then the, excuse me, these are the following techniques that we identified or that were shown to us in the program that I'm in. So there's a stakeholder analysis, a rich picture, and boundary critique. I'll get into all three of them in a moment, but these are the main three we focused on. There is a few others, but they're more commonly known. So for example, a SWOT analysis or Porter's 5 forces, that is the other techniques we touched on, but they're more well known, so we didn't dive into them too critically. So first and foremost, what is a rich picture? So a rich picture is just a diagram of what you know and what are the results of what you know, and a roadmap in essence of what you know. So for example, this rich picture, so I chose the example of myself becoming a bit, a bit chubby around the midsection. So how did I get here? So this is a very good illustration of how I look at the moment. And I got here because I eat a lot of junk food, and junk food will make me crave more junk food. So you got see the sweets there, the donuts, the cake. I love cake also. I'm mentioning it here, and beer as well. So the reason why I buy these things is because it's easy to get, it's cheap, it's convenient. Making an entire meal is it's a long process. On top of it, in my line of work and studying, I sit for more than 12 hours a day. That leads to more laziness, and obviously it increases the problem I have. The friends I have as well, they might be lazy as well, and because of that, we are all enabling each other not to change anything about our situation. On top of that, we stay quite far from any recreational spaces, so it makes it harder. But there is obviously road running, but maybe that's not for us as well. And all these health problems that I have and I'm experiencing will lead to a poor quality of life, a poor health, shorter life, mood swings, bad habits. The list goes on and on. And this is a very simple, rich picture, but this is the basic concept of it. So it's used to identify the situation itself as a whole and how it's complex from the outside perspective. And from this rich picture, we're able to identify the next step, which is the stakeholder analysis. I mentioned it earlier. Now, this is the basic format of it. Basically, on your columns, on your rows, columns, you have your beneficiaries, who's benefiting from the system, who is a victim of the system, who is an expert in the system, who's the owners of the system, who is a legitimizer. When we don't understand the system itself, we see who is it immediately, who is benefiting from the system immediately. And then we get to who it ought to be, who is the intended beneficiaries of the system, who are the intended victims of the system, who are the experts in the industry that can actually guide us in the system, who's the owner of the system, or who are the stakeholders of the system, and the legitimizers. Now, the rich picture and the stakeholder analysis are used to form a boundary critique, which you take to your friends, colleagues, and ask them for their perspective on the situation. So that's more of a discussion. And the reason why that's important, or the stakeholder analysis is important to add to your perspective, is all these five all these five stakeholders have their own perspective, their own voice, and their own interests in the entire system, which is what I found quite fascinating. And that's just a short summary of the course I'd done. It's not really a course, it's part of my modules, but it was interesting to me, and it opened my mind to just different systems and ideas of thinking, which I'm doing at the moment. We are done with this, but thank you. That is my presentation.
Fabulous. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I mean, I think this is something we've been chatting about quite a lot in general, is decision making inside of the team. I think we all represent kind of smaller entrepreneurial businesses, but we often don't put processes in place to actually facilitate decision making. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do from a from a planning perspective, instead of just doing things in a reactive manner. So yeah, thank you, Ed. That was good. Any questions for Ed? Cool. Then with that, I'm going to hand over to Ams, who is recently published. Over to you, Ams.
Thank you for the platform, Mark. Good morning, team, and a very special good morning to our guests. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know me, okay, my screen is not changing. Alrighty. So for those who don't know me, I am Amber. I'm a PR professional. I deal with social media management, content development, and communications. And if you ever need any of these services, feel free to contact me on this email. So I recently attended a webinar by V5 Digital that featured Nadia Badiachi, and the webinar was unpacking emotional intelligence in the workplace. And for me, it was a very insightful session. I learned a few things which I'll be presenting about. So to kick this off, what is emotional intelligence? So in simple terms, emotional intelligence is being able to notice your emotions and managing them effectively. So emotional intelligence also involves being able to deal effectively with the emotions of the people around you. Why is it important in an organizational context? Emotional intelligence facilitates our capacity for resilience, motivation, empathy, reasoning, stress management, communication, and our ability to read and navigate a plethora of social situations and conflicts. So if cultivated, emotional intelligence affords one the opportunity to realize a more fulfilled and a happy life. So what stood out for me, firstly, from the webinar is that emotional intelligence is not just about recognizing and understanding your own emotions. It's also about sensing and understanding the emotions of those around you, and as well as dealing and responding to those emotions effectively. And then number two, I learned that developing an aptitude for emotional intelligence can positively impact well-being. So emotional intelligence enables one to better deal with the emotions, which means that when you're able to feel your emotions without letting them swamp you, you're able to deal effectively with the stress that is increased by those emotions. And when you deal effectively with that stress, it consequently has an impact on your overall well-being. And lastly, I learned that emotional intelligence is something that starts from the inside out. And so creating a culture of emotional intelligence starts with the leaders within the organization. And as a result, the employees will be inspired. So when leaders promote emotional intelligence in the workplace, employees will ultimately be more emotional intelligent. If you're an animation lover, just like I am, this point will remind you of the Pixar's movie Inside Out. So whether you're a leader or an employee or just outside of the organizational context, emotional intelligence starts within yourself, and those around you will ultimately be inspired. And so if you're looking to inspire a more emotionally intelligent workforce, or you're looking for a wellness solution for your business, please contact me on amber@dicusocial.co.za. I work with a local corporate wellness firm called Dynamic Body Technology, and they help businesses build healthy and productive workforces. Their services include employee wellness solutions, financial wellness solutions, economic support, and movement activations. And so that is my 2 cents for this morning, team. Thank you for the platform again, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ems. And I think we saw what you did there with bringing in the DBT stuff. So well done. That's very cool. Just for those who are interested, or a reminder, we are going to be doing the activation at Leader X on the 15th. The presentation on the evening is looking at the relationship between health and wealth and importance of investing in yourself. All in all, it has been a good session, good week. Any closing comments? And Emma, have I missed anything?
I think you've covered everything, Mark. Thanks for the great presentations this morning, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Alrighty, then with that, I'm going to wrap up for today, as I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to wrap up for today, but we will obviously be in touch during the day. And for everybody, have a good weekend, and hopefully you come back nice and recharged on Monday. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Happy
Mark.
Friday.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.